on the live feed to keep myself footing in there. I was jousting with people, that idiot that wanted to discuss the evolution of morality and ethics. My God, that off topic, buckaroo.
I mean, it's off topic. It's an interesting question. I'll give him that.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating one. It's good. Jackson and Wheat and I are going to be doing a whole big section on that in a future book.
Well, that should be interesting then.
Oh yeah, that's our next. After Volume 2 magnum opus, we're going to be doing a thing on basically the evolution of atheism and religion and why there are such things, and ethics and philosophy, and there's a whole bunch of stuff on there. It's going to be a juicy little thing.
Are we live, by the way?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
like
hello,
Internet.
Internet.
We've got one viewer.
Hi, Internet. I'm Dapper Dino. I'm trying desperately to celebrate some semblance of Easter. It's not very easy with a quarantine going. So what I'm doing is I'm drinking caffeine-free Diet Coke with vodka, because that's all I got.
If I had the booze, I would probably do a rum and Coca-Cola. But at any rate,
oh, that does sound nice.
This is sort
right
of
now
an
because I'm
after-show
sick.
discussion of a certain interaction that I just had on Standing for Truth channel with NephilimFree on that little matter of Noah's Ark and the flood and such like, and uniformitarianism. Bum, bum, bum.
Ooh.
Boogie, boogie, boogie.
Terrifying.
Man, my favorite thing about uniformitarianism is the creationist refusal to accept that it's basically just the scientific method, but we're going to use it in geology now.
Yeah. I'm old enough to remember when there was a certain bulkiness at what we would now call neo-catastrophism, you know, the kind of stuff with the Missoula floods and asteroid impacts and all that kind of stuff. But it's still bloody natural. And the reason why so many creationists are really leery about wading into it, I was amazed at how reluctant they were to discuss the Mazzinian salinity crisis, because they don't want to point you to a thing that's actually a kind of a disaster, but it's not the big slosh. So the more they see how much of the fossil record and geological processes can be accounted for by the normal stuff and the occasional blip of unusual stuff, the more space you don't have left over for the big slosh.
But RJ, if it's not the big slosh, then it's nothing, because the Bible says it's the big slosh. So, you know.
Yeah, I was particularly intrigued by, had we gotten farther into it, I was prepared to be discussing why there are particular fossils in certain spots. But I did try to bring up the bit about the foraminifera, the diatoms, and all that kind of stuff, because if he had his camera on, I think there would have been a lot of deer in the headlight moments.
Well, Nephi has to be careful about
I don't know an answer to that.
Nephi has to be careful with his camera, because his camera has gotten him into trouble in the past. Like all those times he's been on YouTube saying that I'm a geocentrist, but then he had to delete all those because, well, he realized how stupid that was. Or that time he had screen share on, and he showed that one of his favorites on his web browser was for an escort service.
Oh, isn't that sweet? You can learn this as a general rule as you get into the field, and TD, the same thing. Never say anything that you don't believe or are willing to defend down to your dying day. Just have that as your principle.
I learned that a while ago, and it wasn't even regarding this.
And I'm exactly as I purport to be. I'm a pusillanimous quidnook and an annoying, arrogant bastard.
And a thesaurus.
What I'm at. Yeah. But I'm not going to pretend something's true or not without it. And ask for bloody sources. Why should that throw you into a conniption fit? If Nephi knew as much as he claims to, he would be anxious to do that.
Oh, you got the chat so riled up with your requests for sources. I hated it.
I would, and Nephi, because he doesn't do that. They don't do sources. He only does tropes.
Yeah. So when he said, "Oh, I'm not going to do your homework for you," when your homework, quote unquote, was verifying his claims, as far as I'm concerned, that's a debate forfeit right there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
If you're not willing to back up a single one of your claims, then just fuck off. I'm sorry, TV Lane, if this is a PG-13 stream, because I just used your one-F-bomb.
Yeah. Fuck no, dude.
Another area that I would have gone in more came up with the questions where I pointed out correctly that young Earth creationism, the flood geology model, is relatively recent. It's the 1920s, and he is going on about what we would call diluvialism in early geology. It's not flood geology.
No.
That actually the flood as an issue isn't really coming up. They were basically arguing whether or not things were formed in water or by volcanoes or something like that in the early days in the Sedgwick era. And once in a while, somebody would say, oh, is that referring to the flood? And basically people would move on. That particular flood geology, that functionally all of the fossil record was laid down in the flood. That was not an argument pre-Sedgwick. That's Ellen White revelation from God, and then Macready Price went out and did all the claptrap on the subject, and then it metastasized through the young Earth creationist movement.
My favorite thing about that is that, by and large, most modern creationists would vehemently reject Ellen White as a source for pretty much anything.
We mentioned it in the rocks were there. There's a body of apologetics at Answers in Genesis and Institute for Creation Research that flat out rejects that there was any influence whatsoever between George Macready Price and Henry Morris and company. And that's just flat out wrong. Ronald Numbers went into enormous detail on that. And he interviewed the people directly.
Yeah, it's...
What do you want to bet whether Nephi has ever read The Creationist by Ronald Numbers or not?
Ooh, that's in the library. I need to read that.
Oh, yeah. That absolutely is astonishing, extraordinary. I may be able, if I can get you a PDF, can I lob that to you?
Yeah, go nuts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's one of the great analysis of the field, and he still writes various articles and things on the view of evolution in religion of the 19th century. There's a whole subcategory along that stuff, because he's not being confrontational. He's just being a decent historian on things, trying to find out what people believe. Some of the ones he came up with, some of the stuff in the British creation movement and that, they're just
Can I bring up something else? He kept mentioning pediments around like Devil's Tower and pointing to the debris around them. Pediments aren't debris deposits. They're a flat, like almost flat surface that's at the base of an erosional feature.
Yeah, I was actually wondering about that because my geology doesn't...
Yeah, pediments are where like you have like a mountain and then it suddenly like flattens out and it's a very like a 5 to 7 degree slope. That slope is called the pediment. And yet
but I'm trying to think how old is Devil's Tower? It's certainly not.
So it formed 50 million years ago, and it was exposed anywhere between 5 and 10. They're not really sure on anything more specific than that.
So hold up a second. Are you saying that Nephi got a technical term wrong in regards to geology?
Yes.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem likely. No, you. That can't be.
This is devastating. Our world has been rocked.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you'll be telling me that when asked what a carbohydrate is, after basing an entire like hour-long argument about carbohydrates, that he'll say that he'll essentially show that he doesn't know.
And he never. I got a slide right here. The pediment area is at the foot of the mountains.
Nephi's very Trumpian. He must always have been right, and he will rearrange reality to suit.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I was talking about, where it's like, oh, he denies ever having been a geocentrist. It's like, Nephi, I've seen you on video claiming that the Earth doesn't move, that the universe moves around it. That's what a geocentrist
Well, wasn't he getting that from like the quantized redshift thing or something?
No, that's a slightly different thing. That's what he's updated to. So he's updated to basically like a Milky Way centrist. Where the Milky Way is
that sounds a little like Robert Gentry, because Gentry claimed to have found the God in some particular constellation. It's the weirdest.
So
Gentry, the guy who came up with the
polonium halos.
Yeah. So it traces.
We're going to mention that in volume 2 too. Rest assured.
Collins has a good paper on it.
It traces back to an actual peer-reviewed article, and I honestly can't remember which one. I wish I could, but I checked in on it, and so it references this article where there was a claim that it seemed like, based on the data that this very much secular astronomer had found, that the redshifts acquired from various galaxies were quantized. But like the p-value wasn't very low, so there's a fairly high chance that this is just statistical noise.
Oh yeah,
So-
trying
No,
to
I've
find
taken a
higher
statistics
level-
class.
Yeah, so
Yeah, you-
the paper said we need to do a lot more research on this because the confidence isn't very high. Well, future research was done, and it turned out that yes, it was a statistical artifact. There were not quantized redshifts, but a certain segment of creationism ran with it to say, well, if there's quantized redshifts, it means that the universe is expanding in these shells from around the Milky Way. And to be fair, if redshifts were quantized, it would be hard to come up with a different explanation than that. But what they didn't do was look into the future data that showed that no, redshifts aren't quantized. But right now, according at least to Nephi's comments recently in the last 2 weeks or so, on my channel in the comments, he believes that the Milky Way is the center of the galaxy on the basis of quantized redshifts.
I finally saw Evograd's piece on Jackson's channel about raw mat. Holy smokes,
Wasn't it
that was
beautiful?
beautiful.
Oh my god, dude. That video on the
was-
DNA barcoding?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we're going to be alluding to that in volume 2. There's a lot of little topics where things come up, and that we're going to make sure that newer material is in there because that's
Erica
just
said
too
she can't
juicy to
join because
pass
she's
up.
going to go to bed.
Oh.
She said you did superbly.
Yeah, it is. She's
And-
later where she is now. There. Yeah, I'm glad that I acquitted myself well on there, and I'm not going to lose any sleep at night knowing that I have failed to persuade the various nincompoop creationists in the live chat that they were wrong.
RJ, you don't sleep.
Tell
at night.
RJ I bet he'll never see those sources.
And I'm inclined to think so too, because I don't. Has anybody ever been able to extract a source out of Nephilim?
I don't know. Were they ever posted in that one thing? Because
Yeah.
I sent my sources to Erica.
Yeah, and so they're always doing the little promissory note on there. In this, oh yeah, I want to have that. We'll put that up. Or the same way as Bill Morgan said, I'll look into that. That sounds interesting, and then he never does.
Yep. Which we asked him about explicitly on my channel.
Same thing with Mike Riddle and the failure to read the Taylor Southon paper. I mean, that's another bit about the source methods, because I've described the Dracula rule before.
If you have, I don't remember it.
In the Dracula lore, the vampire cannot enter your house unless you invite him in.
Is
But
that
the
Dracula,
moment-
or is that
but
more
the-
broad vampires, though?
It was the Dracula book.
I don't remember it from Dracula, but okay.
An awful lot of vampire lore was made up by Bram Stoker.
That's true. I just don't remember that specifically from
But
Dracula, but
anyway,
it's also been a while.
Once he has been let in, however, he can come in unless you wallpaper the place with garlic and crucifixes. You're stuck. Well,
Yeah.
in scholarship, it is that if they don't cite paper X, you can accuse them of being an ignorant boob, but you can't hold them to account for the content of that paper. But if they cite it for any purpose whatsoever, for an authority quote, or they never bothered to read it, but it was a secondary source they nicked from somebody else, doesn't matter. The moment they cite it, every bit of that work can be thrown at them. And that's the Dracula.
Yeah.
rule.
I mean, and that's fair.
Yeah. So don't cite works that you don't want to defend. And so for me, it's like a kid in a candy store that I spent the last couple of days realizing I was going to be debating Nephi anyway. With the debate that Colton had with him when he brought up those damn drop stones, I was curious because I only knew a little bit about the kind of thing. It occurred to me there's probably a lot of different context. It depends on the size of the stone, depends on what it's falling into. But his weird idea that all the rocks of the geological column are like toothpaste, and then they just get extruded out like silly putty, and then they magically turn into rock, and we don't have to worry about how that happens.
In weeks.
Yeah. Weeks. And I think I caught him on that blooper. Is that if he's saying this can be done in weeks, couldn't you do it experimentally?
No, you can't. Because
But that's historical science, RJ.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the fact that Bertolo, my God, when I found that other work that Bertolo had done, a shameless plug for The Rocks Were There, which, by the way, Powell's bookstore my niece told me that she checked Powell's bookstore in Portland, Oregon to see if my book was mentioned there, and it is. So good gravy.
Nice.
That surprised the bejabbers out of me on there.
Well,
And
by the way, RJ, I don't know if you know, but Evolution Slam Dunk is also on the way to my place.
yeah, and I want to know your view on that. You're going to find out so much about your little Therapsid distant cousins in there.
Yeah,
So what was that
I've got
thing
it
that they were
here.
posting?
Oh, sorry.
I'm about halfway through that. It's been on the both literally and metaphorically on the shelf while I
Have
read
you
through
been
rocks
finding it
OpenGeo.
informative?
I have found it informative. It's quite a good read and very.
Colton, what were you about to say?
Oh, I know that in my debate with Neff, somebody was spamming in the comments that allegedly CMI responded to you directly on the
They did.
Therapsid
Oh,
thing.
yes. Oh, yeah. And I thank Standing for Truth on this. I had written the thing. In fact, it's what we discuss in Rocks. We allude to this episode, not their response. And I didn't know that they had written an additional response to it. In fact, the section in question is on page 244. It's the thing where I referred to most recently NephilimFree, a pompous online apologist familiar to both co-authors, etc., etc. And because Nephilim had brought it up. And so I went and researched that. Well, I did not know that. I thought I'd put a little blurb on to see any further comments that came up, but somehow or other that didn't kick in. So I didn't know that they had done a response to it in October 2019. And after 2 weeks, that they close off comments on it. So I come back to it after the fact. Basically, it's him doubling down on the argument that there's somehow a different developmental process for the middle ear components than the ones in the regular jaw, which is just not true. So we will, of course, be responding to that in Volume 2 because
I look forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Oh yeah,
I haven't even read Volume 1 yet. But by the way, I want to give a quick shout out in the off chance that he sees this to Ian Chen, because Ian Chen he is the reason that both The Rocks Were There, Volume 1, and Evolution Slam Dunk are on their way to my apartment, as well as he recently, from the same Amazon wishlist, got me a drawing tablet for my computer, which will significantly increase the speed and quality with which I can get out.
And Ian is a patron for my work as well. So, I say, worthy. Thank you so much, Ian.
Absolutely. And as far as I know, he's a patron for Gutsick Gibbon, too.
Yeah. He has some things, and it's marvelous.
Yeah.
And especially in this time when everybody is stressed financially and all the rest on there, the fact that you're pulling up on this is absolutely extraordinary. I agree with you, Dapper, when we say don't anybody give us any money if you have other things ahead of us that are important.
Yeah. I'm with that, and that's the thing that people say every time that they're like, "Oh, I wish I could give you money," but I'm like, look, man, I do not need your rent money or your grocery money or anything.
We're not preachers.
Yeah. Do not, if you need your money, then I should be like at the bottom of your priority list.
Yeah.
Like Bent Hovind, no relation, is my currently highest patron in terms of like money per month. But I know he can afford it, so I don't mind, right?
And
but like, come on.
Just by volume. If enough people are helping it like $1, that adds up. And so you don't have to spend a heck of a lot on there. I mean, it's not like somebody dropping, $1,000 a month on either one of us. That's not going to happen.
That was
insane. When you think of what the stupid creationists get on their end, you go, holy moly, would I love to get on their gravy train? However, we do not lobotomize our ethics in the process.
And yet they still complain they don't have enough funding to do anything beyond the occasional rate project.
Yeah. Oh, wasn't that fabulous? I love the fact that I was able to I didn't have to buy the rate book full price. There was a wonderful little thing, and they may still be in existence. I haven't been able to buy anything for quite a while, but they got remnant books. And so I think I paid $1 or $2 per volume for the rate books.
Oh, that reminds me. Have you heard of Kent Hovind's 777 Club?
No, but it sounds like
horrible.
Oh, vaguely. I have vaguely.
Okay,
What's the skivvy?
So during his discussion with Arn Ra on the Non Sequitur show, back when that was still a thing that wasn't stolen, Arn Ra, in an offhanded comment, mentioned that he thought it was amusing that he had just found out that he had 666 patrons on Patreon. Oh, I know. Well, like very shortly after, I don't know the exact time frame, but very shortly after, Kent Hovind made a video which made it clear that he thought that Aaron Ra was hosting some kind of club where he was keeping the number at 666 people who were giving him money. I don't know why he decided to go this route.
But because he's an idiot.
Well, okay, fair enough. But he decided to counter that, to have a 777 club, where his goal was to get to 777 people who were giving him money. But the amount that he asks for to join his 777 club is $1 a day per month.
That's 365 smackers a year.
I know. And I'm like, do you not know how patronage on the internet works? Because my Patreon starts at $1 a month. $1 a month gets you access to my early videos, voting, although your vote is weighted considerably less than anyone else's, to be fair, and my patron-only Discord server. And it goes up from there. But like the normal tier that people tend to join is $5 a month, not $1 a day. I have, I think, 3 patrons who are at or above that level out of my, I believe, 17 right now. Like that is
and does anyone manage
crazy.
to do less with the money that's coming into them when you really think about it than Kent Hovind?
Yeah. Well, actually, I've been trying. So there's this guy. I don't know his name, but his YouTube channel is called Lies of the Devil, and he is a former inhabitant of Dinosaur Adventureland. And here's the creepy thing, right?
That place like a compound.
Basically, here's the creepy thing. He was living there because he was the producer full-time for Kent Hovind's videos that he was producing. But Kent Hovind had him there as a independent contractor. Not even an independent contractor, an independent vendor who was selling his services of video production as an independent vendor. So
he thinks more little tax maneuvers.
Right. So basically, this guy was Kent Hovind, Kent Hovind was a customer of this guy. And this guy and his wife were living full-time at Dinosaur Adventureland under this independent vendor arrangement. And Kent Hovind just unilaterally cast him out after he helped someone else pack who Kent Hovind had cast out. So now he has a channel documenting in video some of the more nefarious things Kent Hovind has done.
I will send him across the water.
Well, yeah, including his current polygamous marriage, by the way, because Kent Hovind has not divorced his second wife. Not actually
had a divorce, yeah.
Yeah, he has not divorced his second wife, but he is currently living as man and wife with a second wife.
A state unto himself.
And his second marriage, quote-unquote marriage, yeah, that was a common law marriage.
Much for one man and one woman.
Yeah, so it's a little shady. So I've sent him a message on YouTube, not Facebook, and I haven't heard back. But I might try to send him an actual email, and I'm going to try, if I can, and get an interview with this guy, because my God, are some of the videos that he has up on his channel damning. He has videos of Kent acting very much the cult leader. So
temperamentally, that wouldn't surprise me.
No.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing, and I'm hoping I can get him on. And we're not going to talk about theology because he's still sort of a fundamentalist evangelical thing, which is not my cup of tea. But on the other hand, he recognizes the degree to which Kent Hovind violates even those ethics. And according to him, right now, so right now, the gates of Dinosaur Adventureland have Kent Hovind and his current wife, number 3, patting like Brachiosaurus-looking animals, right? Which is actually Giraffatitan, but that's a completely separate issue that I don't really want to get into, the difference between Brachiosaurus and Giraffatitan. But apparently, originally, the idea was supposed to be that they were going to be painted nude with fig leaves covering their, their little private bits. And everyone, including the painters that they'd hired, were like, I don't know if that's a good idea. Are you sure you want to do this? Like, really?
I never want to ever see Kent anywhere near just a figure.
Well, I'm sure it would have been very idealized. Like, have you ever seen his cartoon of, he tells a story about his daughter going into a museum and asking whether or not index fossils were circular reasoning? And he has this picture of himself and his daughter, and like he's this somewhat muscular, completely like no fat guy standing up, you know, with broad shoulders, and he's got this chin that looks like
He's
you
just
could
the
chisel
Giga
marble
Chad
with it.
meme.
Yeah, basically.
Holy
And it's
shit.
like, is that how you view yourself, Kent?
Mm.
Because
I
like,
just wanna
holy
know-
shit.
I just want to know, do we keep our index fossils in alphabetical order?
Oh my
The
god.
Well,
version Ken Ham versus the Chad
The
Kent Hovind.
Well, as I said, I think maybe off air, I am thinking about doing a creationist tier list as a video. And if you guys have suggestions, don't say them now, because as I said before, I'm trying
Oh, you
desperately
mean
to
from
have a good
people who
Easter.
have an illusory reputation because they're not, you know, utter numbskulls, all the way down to the bottom-feeding parasitical wackaloonery, that kind of a spectrum?
Well, yeah, basically anyone who you would like me to rank. I mean, put anyone. So if you think they deserve being ranked in a video, let me know. And then you can also let me know like where you put them. However, tonight, because I am desperately trying to salvage what is left of my Easter,
Mm-hmm.
I am trying to do that basically by killing demons on Doom Eternal while I do this, and also drinking vodka. So right now is not the good time to give those to me, but in the future,
Because it'll just go in one little earring.
exactly. I am still trying. Look, my last few holidays, as a result of this quarantine crap, have been kind of crappy. So I am trying really hard to have a good
Well,
Easter.
you can tell when I'm drunk because I won't use a coaster.
Oh, well, I am using a coaster.
Yeah,
Actually,
I
I
get
have
real
two
rowdy.
coasters here.
I-
I have two coasters.
I have a
and my-
coaster, but I don't use it for water. I
So
use
here-
it for everything else but water.
Here's the crazy thing.
You are underage, boy.
The top of the desk that I'm using is plastic anyway. I don't need a coaster, but I'm still using one.
Yeah, I get used to. Well, the main thing is that with since I drink ice drinks virtually all the time, there's condensation. We live in a
Yeah.
low humidity environment, and so we get this
Oh.
thing, and I can't stand it if I'm lifting a thing up and then
You know what? Actually,
there's
RJ,
a puddle that drops off of it in the summertime. That can be kind of annoying.
You live in Spokane, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I live in Phoenix, so I'm also in a low humidity environment, and it reminds me of something because I was living in the Kitsap County. I don't know, you know where that is, right?
That's over in Seattle side, isn't it?
Yeah, it's across the sound from Seattle, because you know how there's like that little like
The green
U-shaped-
side of the wet side of the state.
Exactly. Well, so my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, had been to Spokane, and so when she found out that I was living in Washington State, she was like, "Oh, I loved it there. It's so sunny and it never rains." And I was just like, "Oh, you've never been to Kitsap County or Seattle or
if you
anything."
showed most people pictures of most of Washington, they would not recognize it as the Evergreen State.
Right. Whereas on my side, there were the world's only temperate rainforests.
Yeah,
Because
it's-
it rained every goddamn day.
when you were over there, did you go up onto Hurricane Ridge?
I did not.
Oh God, that was one of the most memorable moments. It's the most ridiculously narrow little windy road, but in the Olympic Peninsula, there is basically the Alps, and they've got it sequestered over there. And there's Hurricane Ridge, where the ridge area you can see way up, and you climb a ridiculous amount of space in just a short amount of time. You can see across on a clear day to Victoria, BC, across the side. And they turn around, and there is this vast panorama of snow-clad mountains that just seems to go on forever. And you go, where the hell did they put that here? How does that fit?
well, my favorite thing was every time it would be a clear day and I could see the mountains, the Cascades from my backyard, I would have forgotten already that I could see the Cascades in my backyard. And I would go out to my backyard and be like, oh my God, there's mountains out there.
Yeah, we had it's one of my navigation points when I drive to visit my niece over in Seattle, because we drive through, I drive across the interstate, and there is one spot a very short area. In fact, there's a rest stop in that area that when the weather is clear, you're about 100 miles from Seattle. The Cascades are in the way, but the angle is such that Mount Rainier is right there in front of you, 14,000-foot mountain that just sticks up and it goes, holy shit, that thing's big. And you never see it again. Even when you're in Seattle, you have to get practically onto Tacoma before you can see Mount Rainier from that side. But yet here I am watching at it from 100 miles away.
Well, so the last time I was up on the Space Needle, it was a perfect August day. So it's nice and dry. Because, every once in a while, there's like that 3-week period in like midsummer where it actually gets dry in Seattle. And you have a perfect view of Mount Rainier, including the secondary peak off to the left. If you're looking from Seattle. Yeah. And man, it was so great. And my girlfriend at the time was there with me, and she was like, "This is amazing." And I was like, "Well, yeah, but it's
but
like."
What year were you think you were there?
Okay, that was probably 2013, 14, maybe.
Oh, okay, fairly recently. I was there when the Seattle World's Fair was there in 1962. So I was there when it opened. That great big orange painted derrick. It was a 3-hour wait to get up to the Space Needle, and it was hot as Hades. And oh gosh, that's a long. Do you know? Oh, I'll tell you. Here's the memory lane thing. You know what? It was the world of the 21st century.
Ooh.
Do you know
fancy.
you could see at the Ford Pavilion, they had a model of their Nucleon, which was the atomic powered car of the future. That they had the car, and then they had a little trailer behind it that had the reactor in it, supposedly. I'm not making any of this stuff up.
No, I've seen the Nucleon, and like the reactor's all the way in the back. It's weirdly long. All this plating. You'd have to get it changed out like every year.
They're still there. It's the easiest way. Often when we visit Seattle, we park up at Seattle Center and then take the monorails downtown and then traipse on over
the monorail.
and all that stuff. Yeah. Are we boring everybody to tears about the discussion of Washington State and Seattle?
Hey,
I'm not bored.
I covered
I like
everything from Neff, so I don't know. I don't know what we're supposed to talk about.
Washington State isn't boring. I have very many fond memories of Washington State, including the time I ate the hottest hamburger of my life.
My mother's
Washington
family
has a
lives, so I'm somewhat familiar with it.
A remarkable range of stuff. The North Cascade route, there's multiple passes to get across to Seattle.
Yeah.
And the North Cascade route is only open in the spring and summer because it snows in.
Yeah,
but there are just a pile up of glacial lakes in that area, glacial runoffs, and they have the weirdest color you've ever seen in your life. My God, I think it's like a strange neon-y green that you get from all those little particles and stuff that roll down. It's absolutely fabulous stuff.
You know what? If you guys want to hear a somewhat amusing story, the story of the hottest burger ever is actually fairly amusing. So, I was at my friend's place with a couple of my friends and the person I was then dating, and she had brought, I think I had bought fixins for burgers, and she was gonna cook them up because we're trying to divide the whole labor.
And someone bought a nuclear hot sauce to bring.
Well, so one of my friend who lived there had a bottle of a 1,000,000 Scoville unit hot sauce. Right, and it came with a tiny little spoon on the cap.
Which should tell you something.
Right, it should tell you something. Well, my girlfriend at the time decided to cook up some burgers while we were about halfway done with our game. We decided to take a break because it was a fairly long game. It's called Dreadfleet, in case any of you know what that game is. It's obscure, but so we started making burgers, and she calls us and she's like, "Hey, do you want any hot sauce?" And of course, me being someone who generally likes spicy food, I said, "Well, yeah, sure, I'll put some hot sauce on there." So she, of course, grabs the 1,000,000 Scoville unit hot sauce and dumps 4 or 5 dashes on my burger to spread it out. Ooh. And so I took a bite out of this and immediately started coughing. And I said, "What hot sauce did you put on this?"
Did you have to go and drink about 8 gallons of milk?
I didn't, because I actually have a fairly high tolerance, but it was extremely painful.
Is it like one of those 1,500 or whatever on that index of how spicy
No, it's
stuff is?
painful it is?
No, it's a million.
Yikes!
Literally a million. It was just fire. That's all I could taste was like lava.
Yeah, I'm not one of those. I don't mind Chinese hot mustard and some of that kind of stuff. It's not a problem. But I think there's a different chemistry going on with an awful lot of those jalapeno style things, and I don't like them.
This is an entirely different order of magnitude.
Yeah, I'm like a big fan of Tabasco sauce. I put it on just about all my like noodles and stuff.
Yeah, no.
Oh, you're like my dad then.
I'll put a little. I use a little bit of Tabasco on scrambled eggs and that, but it's just.
That's good.
Well, so here's the thing, right? Like a friend of mine who was visiting my place a few months ago, I have a 400,000 Scoville unit hot sauce, right? He tried one timeful from a fork, and he spent about 2 minutes coughing.
Remind me never to have any hot sauce with you.
I know, right? This was 1 million Scoville units. A million.
God, can you like dissolve steel in it?
Basically, yeah. So she shows me what it is, and I'm like, "Did you see this tiny spoon?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay, this is a spoon that you're supposed to put in like a gallon of chili. Like that's the normal dilution ratio for this stuff." And she's like, "Oh my goodness, should I?"
So this is like the reverse of homeopathy.
Basically, yeah. And she's like, "Should I make you another burger?" I'm like, "We don't have the ingredients for another burger." She's like, "What are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "You know what? I'm gonna finish it." So I did, and I nearly died.
Innards looking like Io on a bad day.
Oh! A few hours later, me and my toilet really regretted that event. Oh my goodness! But like, it might have been the most painful experience of my life, and man, it was. Whew, it was a thing. In fact, that was Bent Hovind, no relation, who you may be familiar with if you watched my channel for a while.
Oh yeah,
a bit.
Yeah, he had not that long ago moved out of that house, and that was hot sauce that he had tried. And just a few days ago, I told him the story for the first time, and he was like, "Yeah, I was done with that hot sauce after the first time I tried it. I was like, nope, that's not for me." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I tried it with like 5 dashes or so on my burger." And he was like, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And yeah, it was, my goodness, was that the most intense thing. But then again, I'm also someone who's known for just going out of my way to eat hot things. So like my 400,000 Scoville unit hot sauce, I bought quote unquote hot salsa from Whole Foods as a delivery thing the other day. And like I tried it, I'm like, this isn't spicy at all. So I've been adding like copious amounts of my 400,000 Scoville hot sauce to it so that I can taste the heat.
Not as intense as hot sauce, but I have gotten weird looks from people when I tell them I like eating Baker's chocolate straight.
You know what?
What is that?
Remind me to send RJ some cookies then.
Yeah, seriously. Well,
what is it? Baker's chocolate?
Yeah, so it's mostly
unsweetened,
just
the pure unsweetened chocolate on there.
Okay.
And so if I make it like chocolate fudge or something in there, those little things that are just, and I'll just be nibbling some of those in addition.
RJ, have you tried cocoa nibs?
I might have. I don't recall off the bat. It's been a long time since I had a chocolate fix.
They're basically roasted cacao bits. They just roasted cacao bean.
I've never heard. I've never had like the fermented chocolate drink. Apparently, they would get all hot up on that when they were going out and ripping people's hearts out.
Have you ever seen the first Doctor Who serial?
Oh, the ancient one with the first Doctor, the one.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, a long time ago. Yeah.
Well, the first. It's either the first or the second. Yeah, I think it's the first serial. They go back in time to ancient Aztec times, right? And the Doctor accidentally gets engaged to a woman because he accepts her offer of hot, spiced, fermented chocolate drink.
Ooh, that sounds more like that might have been the second Doctor.
Nope, it was definitely the first. Yeah.
Oh, it was. Oh, okay. Well, there we go.
Yep, because her female school teacher. Because remember, there were 3 companions. There were her headmaster, her female school teacher, and his granddaughter. Those are the first.
Oh, okay, yeah, because the granddaughter was with that first season, yeah.
Right, and the female school teacher became seen to be their goddess resurrected because they appeared in a tomb, the two of their goddess, and she was there, and they were like, "Oh, this must be our goddess, and these are her manservants, and the granddaughter is her maidservant." And okay, our goddess is
Fun
back.
fact, I think the series either premiered or was very close to the time of the Kennedy assassination.
Yes, it actually got delayed slightly because the BBC decided to cover the assassination as a news item, and they delayed the premiere by either a day
and was
or
starting
a few
out
hours
as
or
a
something.
kid's show, and then just kind of went off in other directions.
Yeah.
Are we geeking you out here?
The geekiness is good.
I mean, I the only Doctor Who I've seen extensively was the one with the 10th Doctor. I remember my stepsister at the time, God, I must have been like 10 years old, showed me the episode with Vashta Narada, and I about shit myself.
Yeah, they've upgraded. They're basically doing what would have been considered movie quality filming in modern context, but the older Doctors all the way into the 1980s look like they were filmed on like a $5 budget.
Basically.
And if they ran their elbow into the spaceship set, you'd see the stars outside wobbling because they were like Christmas lights that were I mean, it's just really,
RJ, they were working with $2.70.
Basically,
yeah.
It's like
that is in pounds.
It's like the original Star Trek budget, except it's slightly worse.
Well, actually, Star Trek was a bloody expensive series at the time. I think they were running like $600,000 an episode, which was pretty pricey.
Yeah. Well, you know why they had like the gangster episode and the the National Socialist
reused costumes and sets.
Yep, exactly.
And the reason why they came up with the transporter is because they thought, oh God, that's landing the spaceship every week. That's an optical shot. That's how about the transporter? And that was just an ad hoc, and it was one of the most brilliant solutions to a problem because suddenly they could make the ship not have to be landable at all.
But Colton, I will say, if you want to check out a little bit more Doctor Who, and this goes for anyone who might watch this now or in the future, the episode that I highly recommend to you is an episode called Blink.
Oh yes. That is one of the creepiest.
Is that the one with the weeping angels?
The stone angels.
Yes.
It's the first one with the weeping angels. If you can watch
I've seen both of those.
Okay, if you can watch Blink and not fall in love with at least that season of Doctor Who, then I don't know what to tell you about entertainment.
Yeah, the series has gotten better and better and better over time because they're able to basically play off of things and I was delighted when they went to a woman doctor. That I go, why not? Why can't he regenerate as a woman? We've had the master do it, so why can't he?
All right, I need to be back in a bit, but continue on. I'll pick up.
Yeah, we're geeking out on science fiction here.
Well, you were discussing science fiction earlier, so I guess that's appropriate.
I'm back.
Yeah, yes. Well, it was the fiction, but without the science. That's never.
RJ, my next, I'm back for just a second. I just want to say, in terms of geeking out, the video that I'm going to upload on Thursday, or rather premiere on Thursday, because it's already uploaded, I speak Klingon in that episode.
Oh,
so yeah.
I also call that Flemish, as in phlegm.
So I'll get back to you on that. If you have further questions, let me know when I get back. But yeah, there is at least 4 or 5 sentences, depending on how you count them, in Klingon.
And we can be reasonably certain that at no time did Jesus ever speak Klingon.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, most.
Yeah,
actually, no, that's history. You can't tell me he didn't.
Yeah, were you there?
To speak Quenya.
Okay, my response to that is always yes, because how do you disprove that I'm not just a fallen angel?
I was there. I have a time machine. Can you prove me wrong?
What if I don't want to show you because I'm part of the reptiles that are hiding the quantized redshift?
Exactly, yes. And there was a little thing that was going on. I can't remember who put it up on Twitter, but they were talking about what are their favorite, the greatest science fictions and all that stuff. In 2001, Forbidden Planet came up, and I'm fonder of Forbidden Planet, frankly, than I am of 2001. But I put my 14 cents in, said, wait a minute, Quatermass in the Pit from 1967, the most ingenious alien invasion story of all time. The Disney 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. That's the most serious Disney movie ever made and way better than the book. And then number 3, Things to Come, H.G. Wells' science fiction from 1936, the only screenplay he wrote, movie script that he wrote, not adapted from a story. And then I would also throw in The Andromeda Strain from 1970. That's one of my favorites. And there's a bunch of them that are really, really neat. And a lot of them are very, very old. So, and of course, we have to have Day the Earth Stood Still, not the Keanu Reeves remake, which wasn't terrible. It just was kind of why when you had the original version of it.
Oh, what was that? What was that series on Netflix that was about like Earth got too polluted and they did make time machines, so people went back to the Jurassic to try to like live in the oxygen-rich environment. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. I know it never got a second season.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Oh man, before I even
Thank
Google
you.
it, maybe you know. Dapper, do you know the name of that show? It was on Netflix for a while. It never got a second season, and it was like Earth got too polluted and too overpopulated, so people started going back in time to like the Jurassic or the Cretaceous or something to
I don't know that it was originally on Netflix. It vaguely rings a bell that it was just a regular cable series. They may have ended up early showing it on Netflix.
It wasn't originally a Netflix original, and
I can't think of what the title was. I think it was on the Sci-Fi Channel.
That would make sense.
I don't remember what it was, honestly.
It was
and I'm racking my brain.
Adequate, as I recall.
Well, it was one of the things I do remember is that they did
Terra Nova.
Terra
Nova.
Nova. Yeah, that is it. Yeah. The thing I remember most about it was that one, they got a few of the dinosaurs wrong, but two, they also introduced some unknown dinosaurs, but dinosaurs that were fairly reasonable inhabitants of the environment.
Yes, dinosaurs for the episode.
Yeah, well, so one of the things is like, okay, do we know all the organisms that existed in any paleo environment? Well, probably not. No. And in fact, we know it where there are paleo environments where it's almost impossible for the fossil record to be representative of the animals in the environment, like the Morrison Formation. The Morrison Formation is like 50% Allosaurus. I guarantee you that the paleo environment was not 50% Allosaurus by
it's just conducive to preserving their bones.
Right.
If you're going to populate the past as a safety margin, why don't you just pick like 55 million years old, instead of the other? Because that way you're
Yeah,
after
why
the
would you
asteroid
pick a time
impact,
where you have to deal with the impact?
where you don't have to deal with dinosaurs? You can just wait around. Once in a while, you might find an early bat to worry about. There's a
RJ, because that doesn't give you a TV show with dinosaurs.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
Why not go back to the
Well, then
Permian?
again, it's futuristic technology, so why not just build a space station and prevent the asteroid?
Literally every time travel TV show or episode of a TV show with time travel or time travel movie, there are better ideas of what to do with time travel. Yeah. Like, one of my favorites is like, okay, so Beethoven just recently watched Star Trek Generations.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the first Next Generation movie, right?
Yeah.
And so in that one, Kirk, in the beginning of the movie, gets sucked into a time vortex thing, right?
Yeah, the continuum or some such thing. I can't remember what it's called.
Nexus.
The Nexus.
Nexus, yeah, right. Where you can exit the Nexus at any point in your timeline. Okay, great.
But you don't want to because it's so nice.
Exactly. But then Picard gets sucked into it when the bad guy blows up the star.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. But then he's like, he finds Kirk and he's like, we need to team up. And he's like, all right, when are we going to go back to? And he's like, I know. Let's go back like 15 minutes before the bad guy launches the missile at the sun. It's like, why don't you go back to when you met him at 10 forward?
Yeah.
Punch him in the damn face.
Yeah, hit him with a brick bat.
Right, and then the whole thing is avoided. It's like, no, because that doesn't give us a big fight scene.
It doesn't give us a plot. Yeah, that's always the thing. Well, the other one that I always find it annoying a plot line is the aliens have come to Earth because they need water.
Are you talking about Battle
it's
Los
like
Angeles?
really abundant everywhere.
Water is rather abundant. Right. Hydrogen is one of the most abundant, if not the most
abundant. Park around an icy asteroid, pick it up, take it home.
It's better than Signs, where water dissolved the flesh of the aliens.
Oh, that one always happens. Yes, although once in a while it can be remarkably clever plot. My favorite in the low budget that's better than it ought to have been movie is the Monolith Monsters. which is really quite a neat little flick. It's about these crystalline things, so they're not a malignant creature. They're just doing their thing, and they're these great big crystals that grow up and then they collapse and they basically grow bigger and bigger. And of course, naturally, salt water takes care of it. You know, if you just all you to do. But it was a remarkably nice. Svengoolie shows it every once in a while on his channel. If you have a chance to pick it up, and watch Svengoolie anyway.
Well, my thing with Signs was like, okay, so these aliens decide to invade a planet that's 2/3 covered in water, that has, in some places, relatively high water concentrations in the atmosphere. So
you're going to tell me that they didn't take a moment to say, like, all the firefighters and be like, hey, they have these things that shoot water.
Right.
Not.
Right. So, but also, what do they go down in? What are their hazardous environment suits made of? Nothing. They go down naked.
At least Battle Los Angeles had that on.
It's like if humans decide to invade an alien planet where the dominant liquid is sulfuric acid, and they were like, "Hey, it rains sulfuric acid here." There are areas where the sulfuric acid concentration in the atmosphere approaches 50%, and they have a civilization that drinks the stuff and sprays it on things. You know what's a good idea? Let's go down naked.
Yeah. Oh, and now on the opposite category, worst science fictions ever. Certainly, I think Zardoz applies.
Zardoz.
How many have you seen Zardoz?
No.
Don't.
Fair enough.
Oh my God, it's got Sean Connery in it. It was John Borman, who is a talented filmmaker, but oh my God, this thing is pretentious dreck, and it's about an hour too long. Oh, it's just really overblown. Saturn something or other with the late yipes, my brain is going Kirk Douglas. That was also a pretentious bad movie. Robert Altman's Quintet. Oh, if you want to watch paint dry, watch that thing. Holy smokes, that's a boring science fiction. So there are some of the troubles on it that they should better watch out. Now, things I've always wanted to have made into movies but have never been done. So many of them have been ticked off because they've made Dune and a whole bunch of others. But A Canticle for Leibowitz, holy moly, that needs to be done as a movie. That is just a poignant novel. Fabulous, from the early 60s. I'd love to see that done. Time and Again, I think it's called. It's a interesting psychological thing where you think yourself back into the past, and it's about spies trying to resolve a thing with the Cuban Missile Crisis and stuff. And anyway, they go back into the 19th century. What's his name from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid? The one that isn't dead, has the rights to it, and I think the rights to the sequel, and he's never filmed it, and that's always kind of pissed me off. One that you may never have heard of. It was beaten out by Dune for the Hugo winning best novel of 1964 or 5. The Witches of Cares. That was just it's a comic science fiction novel, which is very unusual, and it would have been hellaciously difficult to film when it came out, but now it would be easy peasy. All the robot Sheem assassin that's like this spider that's folded up in like a carpet and inside of a box, and all of the various Narthby sprites and weird little creatures and stuff, and teleportation things, and it would be easy to do with modern day special effects, and it's a clever little novel, but it got beaten out by Dune.
Well, I mean, Dune was pretty damn good.
And Lynch's version of it was pretty good. The author liked it.
Yeah.
They condensed down 2 or 3 directors. Steven Spielberg. There were a whole bunch of directors that tried to do Dune, and everybody fell flat on their face on it. And I have only a couple quibbles. I think the over-the-top, pustule-ridden Baron Harkonnen could have been just as easily been played not so weird. The actor was marvelous.
But it was... for purity reasons, I don't like that version of Baron Harkonnen. Or Harkonnen,
yeah, because it's not in the book.
Right. But on the other hand, it's a really amusing character from the filmmaking standpoint. Yeah. So I have a bit of trouble saying no.
I'll tell you, Harlan Ellison, when he was a reviewer for movies at Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction back at the time, And he called the film version of Dune the Gone with the Wind of motion pictures. He said, this is an important movie. And I'm still enormously impressed with it. That given how difficult it was to pull off, Lynch, of course, is a surrealist and weird. So it's natural that it's going to have surrealist, weird elements to it. But it's a genuinely epic movie. I think the score is really remarkably good.
I'm curious about this new one that they're coming out with.
That'll be funky. The BBC one was quite interesting. That they did a big miniseries.
Yeah, I saw the first part. The Dune part.
See the second part. The first part basically is riffing off of the Lynch movie. That there's an awful lot of that's basically Lynch already did that. Thank you. But the second one, where they riff off of the later novels, those are really quite interesting. They get into that political aspect and the whole issue about degenerating culture of this messianic religion cult and all that, and it was actually quite good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, because I don't think I got that far, but
have you seen The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai?
No.
Oh, that's one that you'll either love it or you'll hate it. It's my guilty pleasure movie. For one, I'll tell you right off the bat, John Lithgow's in it.
Okay.
That immediately settles it. It's a weird. I think Weller is the guy that plays. He's a rock band nuclear physicist, time dimension expert.
Sounds just like me.
It's this weird off the wall nutball film. Lithgow plays Dr. Lizardo, who is a scientist who, when he goes into this alternate dimension, becomes a complete crazy person. And he's doing this kind of Mussolini impression that is just a wonder to behold. And they were kind of filming this on the fly, winging it, very low budget.
Nice.
To where there's layers and layers of in-jokes about the War of the Worlds broadcast and Orson Welles, and they even got an actor who looked like Orson Welles that was delivering it like Citizen Kane, and it was just weird little layers of stuff. At one point, they were thinking that their backers, they were trying to check to see if the backers were even looking at the rushes to see if they were going to be like pulling the plug on them. So they actually have a scene where there's like a press with a watermelon in it. And what's his? Oh God, he was in Independence Day. Played the mathematician guy.
Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum. It's another reason to watch the movie. Anyway, he's all in his little cowboy gear. Anyway, they're walking past this thing, and so these scientists are doing this experiment, squashing a watermelon, and they deliberately put it in as such a pointlessly irrelevant thing to do that they were testing to see if the people doing the backing of the movie were even paying attention to what they were filming, and they weren't.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a utterly weird movie, and you'll either fall in love with it as just the funkiest silliness you've ever seen in your life, or you will go, my God, I will never get this hour and a half back. No middle ground on Buckaroo
Well,
Banzai.
I've seen The Room more than once, so I don't have to worry too much about not getting an hour and a half.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Although it's not really science fiction. The other night, I watched The Platform on Netflix, and oh my God.
I've been wanting to watch
horror
that.
movie.
Okay, don't spoil it, because I've been wanting to watch that. But one thing that has been bugging me a little bit is that the title on Netflix that I'm seeing is The Platform. But the title that I'm getting in Spanish is El Hoyo, which means the hole. And those are like basically opposite meanings.
And you know what's hilarious?
What is
the movie's in German?
What?
Well, that makes it even more interesting.
That's the native language to it.
So they run it with subtitles or dubbed?
Scheiße.
Well, they have a dubbed version, but I didn't even notice it was dubbed because on Netflix it automatically set it to English for me. But it took me a little bit to notice, hey, their lips aren't matching up with the words.
I try to watch foreign language things with the subtitles because I kind of want to hear how they actually sound.
Me too.
Yeah.
Especially since the dub actors are sometimes worse than the native language actors.
Oh, but it's
Another
such a good social commentary.
Another
Isn't it
film
good?
that's in the you'll either love it or hate it thing, and this is way longer than Buckaroo Banzai, and it's a mad world. That is the epic comedy of all time. In the long version, they finally have an almost restored edition of it because like a half hour was lopped out of it after it was released to bring it down to the short 2-hour and 45-minute version.
Ooh.
But it's got almost every comedian under the sun that was alive in one form or another in there. It was just spectacular. I think Red Skelton was even in it. But it's a gigantic epic comedy that you'll either fall in sync with it, or you'll go, people think this is funny. I love it. And it's got a fabulous score. It was done on a dare. I don't know if you've seen much of Stanley Kramer's movies. Inherit the Wind.
Wait, it was done on a dare?
Yeah. Inherit
That's
the
why
Wind.
I know Klingon.
Have you seen Inherit the Wind?
Yes.
Okay, that's Stanley Kramer.
Okay.
On the Beach is Stanley Kramer. Judgment at Nuremberg is Stanley Kramer. You're getting a pattern. These are serious message movies.
Yeah.
And so he was at a dinner party or a thing at a club with all of these New York film critics who were just fawning over him. He was on a roll. He made these just gripping motion pictures, and they're serious. And they said, we adore your work, but of course you could never make a comedy. And he said, oh. So he made this it's the only time he filmed a major film in color. He pulled the stops out for this goddamn thing in Ultra Panavision. It's one of the widest movies ever made, and it's got just gobsmacking special or stunt work in there. Try flying a twin-engine Beechcraft live with the propellers running into a restaurant set with the stunt people and the glass being, it would be totally illegal to do that today. If that cable that was holding up that airplane had failed, they would have killed 20 or 30 people. It's got Jonathan Winters, the mother-in-law from Hell, played by Ethel Merman. It's a lot of, you'll be like a time travel trip into 1960s humor, because almost everybody in there, you may probably not even recognize half of them because they've been dead for years and years and years.
Well, RJ, you say that, but I'm 150 million years old. That's
true. That's true. But it's this incredible roller coaster plot that virtually takes place in real time. As this, nice. It's not a spoiler to tell you that Jimmy Durante is an old guy who has stolen money and served a long prison sentence for it. And he's now gotten out, and he is racing to get the money dug up under a big W. You can't miss it. It's under a big W. And all right, wait a second. Left or right, guys? Which way do I go?
Left.
Okay, left. There we go.
And he literally kicks the bucket because there's a bucket, and his bing! Nice. Yeah.
Demons expect you to turn right.
It's filmed in just lavish color. If you can get the Blu-ray version of it, it's just fabulous cinematography on this thing. It's the gorgeously filmed motion picture, and it's got some of the things that are scenes that will stick in your mind forever. You'll never be able to get them out of there. There's Dick Shawn plays this hippy dippy surfer guy who they're trying to call him because they need him to be able to drive down so that they can bypass and get down to where the money is faster than everybody else. And they're trying to call on the phone from the phone booth, and he's there listening to jazz with this beautiful girl in a swimsuit, and they're just going like this. Oh, baby, oh, he's a baby. And it just goes on, and you're going, answer the phone, answer the phone. Nice. Yeah. So it's one that in the long version that's available, finally, it's like 3 hours and 15 minutes. And it's a big, it's one of the longer movies. There are not too many longer than that. I think the only two, well, we'll leave out War and Peace that the Soviets did in 1970, that's 12 hours long. Right. I don't want to worry about that one. But the two uber long movies are Gone with the Wind from 1939, that clocks in at 4 hours, and Cleopatra, that clocks in at 4 hours. That's the short version of Cleopatra that was going to be even longer, and they chopped a whole bunch of stuff out of it. And I'm still hoping someday somebody is going to find buried in somebody's damned archive the roadshow version of Cleopatra to find the missing hour of its 5-hour roadshow version. But that was a Cleopatra practically bankrupted 20th Century Fox. It was so bloody expensive. Gone with the Wind, by contrast, was to this day, when you adjust for inflation, one of the biggest money makers of all time.
Oh yeah.
Everybody saw that, and it's
Yeah.
a big movie. There are some elements in there, given the elements of potential racism, and it's about the South during the Civil War, and
it wasn't as bad as it could be.
It was remarkably liberal for 1939.
Right,
But
which is, you know.
Well, and what's her name? The black actress won an Oscar for it.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. And it's got
Well,
a
there you go.
spectacular David O. Selznick production. He was had been at MGM, and he decided, there was a revolving door. This is another connection with Wizard of Oz that was occurring at the same time, because there was almost a revolving door of people that would be working at MGM, and they would have burnout, and then they would go over to work helping on the Gone with the Wind, and then would have burnout, and then they would go back over to MGM again. So some of the directors, there was finally they ended up with the director Fleming, who was the official one. He had gone flame out when he directed a segment of the hard to do Wizard of Oz film that was going on over there. But they were both filmed in Technicolor, which was a rare process, and there were only a few Technicolor cameras. So this was like the Rolls-Royce film process. And if you get a chance to see either that or Cleopatra in Blu-ray, get it, because holy shit. With Cleopatra, that's in Todd AO, and you get to see what $42 million would buy you in 1962. That was probably a couple $100 million movie by modern day standards. And it was scandalous because Liz Taylor divorced her husband and ran off with her co-star Richard Burton because of the movie, and it was hemorrhaging money right and left. Daryl F. Zanuck was having conniption fits when it finally reached $40 million, where he said, wait a minute, is this ever going to end? So he pulled the plug on the production, and so they now had to cobble together a release film that they made out of it. And he said, well, wait a minute, so many of our big fabulous sequences, the entry into Rome that's gobsmacking to this day, God, shit, that set's mammoth, on her giant sphinx that's pulled into there. That a lot of that takes place later in the story. They need a kick butt opening. So even with all the money they'd spent on it, he authorized another $2 million to film a new opening for the movie, which is the Battle of Pharsalia, where they're burning all of the bodies after Pompey has been defeated. And it is like one where you go, as there's this huge valley and these monstrous funeral pyres are going off, and the guys come in with their soldiers and they come up the hill and all that, and it's all full scale live. There's no optical effects involved. This is just, whew. They don't make them like that anymore.
They just recreated ancient Egypt because fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah. Oh well, they had to do it. They had to do it several times.
Yeah.
Because they started filming Cleopatra in England, and a typhoon hit, destroyed all of the sets they had built for Alexandria on the English coast. Well, so that's why they moved to Italy, which was the problem, because Italy is, let's cheat you as much as we can. And they rebuilt this monstrous set for Alexandria, and then the Rome set they built the forum bigger than the actual forum.
Nice.
And there's always a thing I look for when I'm watching Cleopatra, is when they're pulling Cleopatra on her giant sphinx through the arch of Titus that didn't even exist in Caesar's time. And if you look really close, there's a couple of frames where you can see the shadow of the scaffolding of this thing holding up the set from behind. The wooden scaffolding,
nice,
shedding across her. And she was scared shitless in that scene, because this monstrous, like 80-foot long sphinx, and she's like 30 or 40 feet up in the air on the top in the cradle in the big sphinx part. And she's there with the kid playing Caesarion, who's like 6 or 7. I think he was the son of the producer or something. And there is this platform they're on, and it's gimbaled. So when it's lifted up and they go going down the stairs, it angles, but the platform they're on stays stable. And so all the side marks move, and it's counterweighted, hopefully.
Yeah.
And no safety belt. So she's up there like 30 feet in the air, clutching for dear life this damn kid, hoping she doesn't fall off it, because if anybody tilts to the one side or the other, they're going over. So she did a spectacular job of looking calm and serene while she's just in a panic.
You know what is a similar movie that has?
It's almost 2 a.m. and I'm
Oh,
pretty
God,
tired,
bye,
I'm gonna go
kid.
to bed.
all right. Sorry about that.
I'm gonna make TD the host.
Oh,
Okay.
have a good
Are you
night.
bored, silly TD yet or not?
Oh no, I'm
Night.
having good fun. Although I am also getting a bit tired. It's
Yeah, I got to go.
10:45.
10:45. It's all up to you kids to deal with
going
it.
for
What are
an
you
hour
gonna
and
say,
10
Dapper? We
minutes.
got to get Dapper in.
Well, I want to say another movie that has a similar level of spectacle is Charlton Heston in The Ten Commandments, which, as far as I know, still meets the record for the most extras in any scene in any movie.
And it's better than the original version. It's one of
it's an amazing movie. I still love it to this day. I mean, it's one of those, like, I think it's like 3.5-ish hours or so.
It's about that. Yeah, it's schlocky as all get out. Has a pretty good score. This was the same guy that eventually did the Ghostbusters score. Is the fellow that did the music for it.
It's a great movie, and I would say actually it has a better message than the biblical original. So
the 1920s one is just sanctimonious clap.
Yeah.
This one at least is beautifully photographed. The version that they show on ABC is the restored Blu-ray edition, and it's gorgeous. That was filmed in VistaVision, which was Paramount's film process, and to this day it's still used for special effects. You have seen VistaVision footage without ever realizing it.
That I did not know.
The second and the third Batman movie, the one where Bane tries to take over and blow up the thing to get, when you see when the place where he blows in to get all of the stuff down in the Bat Lair.
Okay.
That was a miniature work that was filmed in VistaVision because it's high resolution, and then matted in. Oh, by the way, did you notice the fact that the movie, the second and third Batman movies would switch from IMAX to Panavision? The aspect ratios will change.
Not specifically, I don't remember that, but I believe you.
You don't even notice it when you're watching the movie. Until I realized what was going on, I go, what? Because you get engrossed in the movie. But go look, all of the outdoor action adventure scenes were filmed in IMAX. And that's a different aspect ratio than the Panavision, which is a narrower format that was used for all the interior shots. So you'll see it going from letterbox to full screen on a widescreen set. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, VistaVision, I'll tell you some VistaVision movies to see in VistaVision. It was Paramount's film process. By the way, like, you know, the odd thing about what IMAX is as a film process, other than the fact that it's 70 millimeter?
Probably not.
The film runs sideways to the camera.
Really?
So that allows the image to be big, 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 big. Well, VistaVision is like IMAX, except with 35 millimeter film. It runs sideways to the camera. So that means if you think about an Academy frame image, 35 millimeter, and try to make it widescreen the way they did with CinemaScope, they use special lenses, which meant you're just padding out the image. It's not more pixels. It's just spread out.
Yeah.
A Panavision is the same way. The super duper widescreen processes, like the one that Ben-Hur was filmed in and stuff, will use 70 millimeter film and was just wide. Todd AO for Cleopatra is just great big. But VistaVision, if you take that 35 millimeter film and imagine turning it on its side, now you can get a wider image using 35 millimeter film that's almost 70 millimeter quality. And so that was so good that to this day, it's still used to film special effects because you get such high resolution, and therefore when you're optically fiddling with it to put it in with other stuff. So all of those action things where all the models are being blown up is in VistaVision. But anyway, a bunch of Hitchcock movies were in VistaVision. So if you see To Catch a Thief and
I've seen that one.
North by Northwest. That's
another good one.
In fact, that's another big. You see, of all the great film directors, there's only a handful that were film editors to start out with, and Hitchcock was one of them. David Lean was a film editor to start out with. So was Robert Wise, that did Day the Earth Stood Still and Sound of Music and all that kind of stuff, and Star Trek: The Motion Picture. But
Well,
anyway,
yeah.
Hitchcock starts out earliest because he's doing his stuff in the 1920s, the Academy frame size silent movie. That's a little bit different aspect ratio when they started putting the soundtrack along it. But anyway, that's how he envisaged movies. And he did not like the widescreen, never filmed a movie in an extreme widescreen format, but he could get used to VistaVision aspect ratio, even though it was monstrously large. So when he did North by Northwest at MGM, he filmed it in VistaVision, when normally it would have been filmed in CinemaScope.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there you got more information than you will probably ever remember once you sober up.
Well, I'll tell you
Right.
what, sobering up is a fair bit away because I still have, technically, Easter Day has passed already because Easter Day was from Friday sundown
the Russian Orthodox
until
way, yeah.
Sunday. However, I like to, just for no reason at all, other than because it's fun, say that Easter starts on Saturday sundown and it ends at midnight on Monday morning.
Just make the Church of Dapper Dino. You just make up your own calendar. You got it covered.
The Church of Latter-day Dinosaurs.
But anyway, do you have a Blu-ray player?
I do not.
Okay,
I do have one on my wish list though.
Yeah, they're actually remarkably cheap now. I mean, with it.
RJ.
Yeah.
The Blu-ray player I have, it's this gigantic blocky thing, bigger than the cable box.
Yeah, things have switched down now. My Sony Blu-ray player, which I got quite a few years ago, is a little itty bitty thin thing like that. But it has the advantage that Blu-ray titles can handle certain formats gobsmacking. A lot of the movies that you'll get on Blu-ray will be nice looking better in Blu-ray, but if they were filmed 35 millimeters, so Jurassic Park, Raiders of the Lost Ark, things like that were 35 millimeter movies, they'll look better in Blu-ray, but they won't necessarily make you go. But 70 millimeter movies will go yipes, and ancient 3-strip Technicolor movies like Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind, because the color resolution on those things was just incredible. And Blu-ray, unlike DVD, is not dependent on the NTSC optical based format. It's all digital, and so they get a color balance. 2001: A Space Odyssey in Blu-ray is way better, because all those weird reds and stuff that you were getting there that just saturate, because red is at the upper level of the spectrum on NTSC, so it tends to wash out and look too red. It's hard to get it balanced properly, but it's easy peasy in Blu-ray.
Okay,
so
well, that's
more
cool.
than you ever wanted to know about film techniques and processes.
Yeah.
But VistaVision is one that is gorgeous in that process. And then the 70 millimeter ones, if you can see Patton in Blu-ray, oh God, that's gorgeous movie. And anything that was in Todd A.O., Cinerama, How the West Was Won in the restored edition on Blu-ray is just unbelievable. Holy shit, I had no idea what Cinerama looked like. That was the one with the 3 projectors. That was very unforgiving to film in, and they stopped doing it. In fact, they eventually figured out how to make a single lens 70 millimeter Cinerama, which is what 2001 was filmed in. But the 3-strip Technicolor basically had 3 35 millimeter film running together, where there would be kind of a splice in between, and it was on a gigantic curved screen. So it was wraparound. And I have never seen Cinerama in that format. There's still a Cinerama theater over in Seattle, but I've never actually been there or seen a movie in Cinerama. I'd love to, because it had a wraparound quality, and you get a bit of it on the Blu-ray, where they have not only the standard letterbox version, but the problem is it's intended to be on a curved screen. So what you get at the edges are like railroad train lines suddenly kind of curving at the edge. It looks skewed, because it should be projected on a curved screen. So there's a smile box version that pulls the image up to simulate that wraparound effect. So all the straight lines run as straight lines then. And I'd never seen anything in that. But the main thing is the resolution on it. It was designed with a special lens, and you could never change the lens. The directors hated working in it because it was too fixed. But it's the same curvature as the eye. So it has exactly the same resolution as the eye. And so you're seeing depth of field. If things are like, whoa, and you're seeing things that are sharp, way hundreds of feet away, where you're going, holy moly. And when I first saw that, I had only seen the 70 millimeter release version that they had made off of the old prints. And so it was okay, but not particularly spectacular. And then I saw this restored edition, and now I know why everybody went at Cinerama at how gorgeous it is. Incredible stuff. You will not have seen any movie that looks quite like that for just the color balances and the scale of it. But it was just weird to film in. Everybody that was in it hated it, because you had the center frame, the Baker, and then the Alpha and the Charlie that were the secondary cameras. And there was this monstrous bug-eyed thing with a big cowl over it that was the camera that you couldn't get closer than like 18 inches to it. Otherwise, there would suddenly be extra of you on the side. That was a problem. And if you had people talking in the Abel and Charlie frames at each other, because of the curvature of the screen, when you filmed them, they couldn't look at each other. They had to have somebody way off in the distance holding up a big ball that they would be focusing on, because their eyeballs had to be looking there so that when it was projected, they would look like they were looking at each other.
Nice.
And needless to say, nobody liked doing that.
Yeah, it does sound like a pain in the butt.
So one of the directors said, fuck you. I'm going to do almost every one of the dialogue scenes with them in the middle frame. And so most of you can tell the directors that really paid attention to that, because they were allowed the actors to actually look at each other while they were doing it. And everybody is brother in it. John Wayne is in it, and Debbie Reynolds. It was a breakout, fabulous role for her. Robert Preston and Henry Fonda. And it's just old. And there's some spectacle scenes in there. My God, the train wreck scene that occurs, where all full scale. And it's just some amazing work on it, and great sound effects, and a fabulous score by Alfred Newman, who is the uncle of Randy Newman, the Newman family at 20th Century Fox. So is this more information than you ever wanted to know?
More than what I knew.
Well, yeah, let's say that.
But yeah, so all of those are ones that are big movies. They were that was in the ancient days when you would have a big movie like this. You didn't see it in a double feature. You saw the movie, and it had opening credit music, and there was intermission music. An intermission. Imagine the movie stops, and you go out and go to the bathroom and buy popcorn, and then you come back and resume the movie. That doesn't happen. Even Titanic is one haul.
Yeah.
Today they don't do that anymore, because studios did not, and to this day, don't like extremely long movies, over 3 hours, because they can't run as many. So they would prefer to be shorter. If you want a super duper tiny epics, Quatermass in the Pit and Things to Come, they're both about an hour and a half long. So you can get them by just beautifully. They're the most economically tidy script you're ever going to see in your life. Beautiful stuff. So there's some stuff to put on your little list there. Well, I better let you go. My God, it's 11 o'clock here, and it's probably about sunrise where some of you are.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Well, yeah. So everyone who's still watching the Dapper Dinosaur,
I apologize for dithering on.
Yes, it's been fun, but there's been a lot of vodka. There's been a lot of movie talk. There's been a lot of Nephilim-free, which is always a bad idea.
Nephilim sucks knowledge from the people. You see, so you have to kind of compensate for it to get yourself back up to where you were before you started talking to him.
So here's my thing with Nephilim-free, right? My general stance has always been I have no interest in having a dialogue with Nephilim-free. I let him come on my channel because I didn't think G-Man would be on there. And when he came on, and basically my attempt at moderating was like, hey, Nephilim, you have to stop rambling and let Erica get a word in. And he rage quit. That was when I was like, that's it. I'm done. I am just done with Nephilim-free.
But I was taking the attitude that I can't imagine a circumstance if somebody wants me to debate, I'm going to say yes, and I will attempt to make the best of it.
And that's fair. But for me, if it's Nephilim-free, I just don't care.
I would stipulate, perhaps I could say, Nephilim, please provide the sources for the previous times that we've debated before we debate again.
That would be an interesting
I'll never have to debate him ever again.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you all for the little show on things. And there's so many wonderful subjects that I'll be getting that will go into the new book. And I'll make sure that Standing for Truth gets the information on the technical work that I alluded to along the way. And then we'll see if Nephi manages to make good on his end.
Seeing how we're back to Nephi,
Yeah.
something I wanted to begin the stream on, but I guess we'll end on.
Oh, I
also
thought you
to
had
pad out-
jumped in on it. Okay.
To pad out until an hour 30 is two things. One, I don't remember if Nephilim brought it up or if somebody in the chat brought it up, which was pollen.
Oh yeah, he did.
Oh yeah,
he did.
The
Yeah,
funny
that's that
thing
damn
is,
and then he made the mistake of switching it. Normally, it's the Precambrian pollen. That's Leonard Brand and stuff from way back in the 1980s. And basically, it was an awful lot of
Yeah, he
pollen
was
gets
talking about
reworked.
Cretaceous pollen. Like,
But
why
then
wouldn't that be a
he
problem?
switches and forgets about that and starts talking about the Cretaceous. And I'm going, do you realize, Nephi, that this is not a problem?
yeah, it's like if it's angiosperm pollen, it's like okay, whatever. Angiosperms are known
Yeah.
to have evolved
So
in the late
by
Jurassic.
bringing up the
Not even then,
Cretaceous, that
actually.
was a genuine
Earlier.
blunder on his part. He didn't realize that,
Oh,
no,
poor
you've gone the
Nephi.
wrong spot.
Yeah, and it's
Poor
even
Nephi.
more hilarious because the group that pollen is a key part of began in the Carboniferous.
Yeah.
You start seeing pollen long before dinosaurs. It's just hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, man, you know what? Actually, James, I would say, like, mark today on your calendar. So 4/19/2020, right? And then until Nephi gives you a claim or a source for every one of his claims today, just say no. You haven't given me a source for your claims, so I no longer trust you to make claims.
Yeah, what point is there for you to come on to ask leading questions where I give an answer, but you don't like them, so you repeat them again 5 or 6 or 7 times, and I ask for sources and you never give them, and we just go around and around. That's why I stipulated early on in the show, let us just assume that we have had this exchange 1 billion times, and let's move on.
Right, but he's not going to do that. So
no, he never will. If I was as flimsy a secondary source citer as Nephilim is, I wouldn't want to give my sources either.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm actually more willing to debate Kent Hovind at this point than I am to debate NephilimFree.
Technically speaking, Kent identifies sources once in a while.
Yeah,
he puts the little blurb on where he carefully copied them from Walt Brown, and at least you can track them down. But Nephi doesn't even get to that level. It's a pile up of just secondary images.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
As a bit of my like creationist tier preview thing, at this point, I'm thinking about rating Nephi as an F and Kent as a D.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. I think that's fair because Kent Hovind, both of them are not original researchers, but Kent has a certain level of parasitism that's a little more direct. It's possible to actually track down where he's stealing his stuff from, whereas Nephi is below bottom feeder level because it's just a vomit of unspecified material. Then you move up the pecking order. Standing for Truth is at a higher level, I think, than Kent does, because he copies the things on a much more technical level and memorizes more shit. And so at least he can rattle off created heterozygosity and brandishing terms and repeat the technical literature at the technical literature level. He'll cite those or allude to those in a way Kent doesn't. Then you move higher up on the food chain to the apologetics crowd that you get at ICR and AIG that are like the Mike Riddle class. They're basically a reworder group. They're rewording what the party line is. And they're cleaving very tightly. They're not free-for-all people like Kent Hovind who just picks any old port in a storm.
Well, I'm about to get out of here, but like I said, I'm thinking about doing a creationist tier list.
Yeah.
So if you guys have names that you would like me to include, let me know. And I'm thinking about doing like ranking them in a few different areas. One
when you get the rocks were there's a section in the book where we list off the fact claimants. I think it's like in 4 or 5 or 6. There's like 60. That's the entire anti-evolution fact claimant list. And 45 or so of them are young Earth creationists, and the rest are intelligent designers. And then there's Fazal Rana and U. Ross as pimples. That bunch all represent what would be thought of as the upper tier because they are the ones making the primary
Right.
source arguments, and everybody else is below that.
Well, I don't know that I include that many because like I can probably only include like a dozen or so, and they have to be.
Oh
the
yeah,
most
you can triage
famous.
because you can look at it
Yeah.
just by volume. The ones that get relied on an awful lot. I think Andrew
Right.
Snelling is an obvious one to.
Oh, Snelling will be in there.
Yeah.
But like I'm thinking about like rating them in terms of things like originality, accuracy.
Virtually most all of the fact claimants, with the intelligent design bunch, which you probably won't be going into that end of it, an awful lot of them are in effect just kind of retreading. Steve Meyer is like on a borderline list in terms of that. So he's in there because he does mention some technical material. But Michael Behe, he would be a direct fact claimant.
Well, I'm also thinking about doing a tier for like conspiracy nuttery. So that'll have Kent Hovind pretty high up.
Oh yeah, he overlaps into that. Yes, that's
S tier. Nathan Thompson.
That would also slide over into Bob Enyart.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what. So right now I'm thinking like just intelligence level, honesty, conspiracy nuttery, and
you have a multi-dimensional array
and have a source methods thing. I'm thinking about trying to arrange them in terms of like how they average out on all those, because we'll have some people who are like super conspiracy nuttery, but like their intelligence level isn't super low.
I make the distinction between the techno geeks, the detail fiddlers, and the non-detail fiddlers. So Dwayne Gish, an Andrew Snelling, a John Woodmarapp, they're detail fiddlers. They cite a lot of technical jargon. They are just awash with sources. They're really, really detail-y. Then there's the kind of the step back and do the philosophy-ish and the more generic stuff. Most of the intelligent designers kind of fall into that category, where the amount of technical citations in an entire Steve Meyer book is less than some of the things you actually get in just a few John Woodmarapp articles.
All right, well, it's probably going to be a direct...
Yeah, we have made 1 hour and 31 minutes.
Right, well,
I am going to finish this off with the question that I unfortunately did not get asked, that I submitted, which is, how does NephilimFree deal with volcanic ash deposits, like, say, the ashfall beds?
Oh, I didn't explicitly mention ashfall, but I brought up volcanic ash. And he basically said, that's not a problem. That can occur. Yeah, no problem.
And waved it away. And it's just like...
Yeah.
Okay, then.
Yeah. None of the science is a problem.
You'll see a big section of Chapter 7 is just on the volcanic ash problem.
Yeah.
There.
Well, I'm going to get out of here. I'm just going to say, hey, if you're watching this, check out my channel. I've got stuff. I upload pretty much 3 times a week, every week. I haven't failed in that in months. So, my next show is Eric with Erica. I'm going to have Gutsy Gibbon on. We're going to do a continuation of our critique of a thing Eric Hovind did. And then I have an FAQ video coming out where I only speak a little bit of Klingon, by the way.
I don't think I've noticed this before, but isn't that not a picture of Godzilla and Mothra over on the wall?
Yes, it is, actually. Yeah.
Okay, that's the first time I spotted that. I apologize for my lethargy.
Oh, no, that's actually, that's part of the movie poster for Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack, which is not only the best of the Millennium Era movies, in my opinion, but it is also the most verbose title in the Godzilla filmography.
Mothra.
Yeah.
I always like the flying turtle, Ghidorah, the one with the little rocket engines out of his.
It's not Ghidorah because that's not Ghidorah or Ghidorah is the.
The ones with this multiple heads. Yeah, that was it. Yeah,
you're thinking of Gamera.
Gamera, yeah. Too many critters. They make terrible house pets.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you everybody who's watching for coming, and have a great night.
Yeah, we digressed a lot.